Hi, everybody. Welcome in. Happy Tuesday to you. I hope you're having a great week so far, guys. I know the week's just getting started, but we're here together, and that makes things much better. It's not Monday anymore either, right? Monday's over, so we can celebrate in the fact that Monday is done. It is now Tuesday. We've gotten past the Monday. Ugh, I don't know how you guys feel about Mondays, but that's kind of how I feel about them. So I hope everybody is doing well. It is so good to see you guys. Hi, Linda. Hi, Stephanie. Mary is here. Pat's here. Nicola's here. Hi, Cecilia. How are you? Pat says, love Smoky Quartz. Good, because I got a great bracelet for you today. It's really pretty. I hope that you are going to enjoy it. It's pretty easy too. This is not a hard project by any stretch of the imagination. Hi, Ginger. Facebook's making their way in. All right. So before we get started with that, I got a couple of things to run through and then we will get right into the project. So first and foremost, I would like to remind everybody who happens to be a Hardwired member that we will be meeting at 4 p.m. Eastern this afternoon for our Hardwired project. So looking forward to that one. We're doing a fun pendant that's a little different. So that's what we will be doing this afternoon. If you're a Hardwired member, be sure to set your reminder for that. Also, be sure that you are setting your reminders for Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time for our Feel Good Friday show. That happens every Friday and is one of my very favorite things that we do during the week here. All right. Other thing to remind you guys of is that I do have affiliate links and my team drops those affiliate links. They're also provided in the video description here as well. So whether you are looking for that right now or you come back later to rewatch this as a replay, just know that in the description, all of my links are listed. But my team is always here dropping those links on both Facebook and YouTube, guys. And that affiliate link for Art Beads may be handy today if you would like to use it, because I'm using a very beautiful clasp that I got from Art Beads, and some of you may want to grab one or check out some of the other clasps that are available on the Art Beads website just because they're gorgeous. And you know, sometimes it's better to use something really pretty than just a standard lobster, which I am very guilty of doing. So I'm excited to show you guys the clasp in today's show. However, I do have other affiliate links as well, guys. Just know that anytime you use an affiliate link, one of my affiliate links, I do make a small commission off of all of those purchases. And that, of course, is very much appreciated. You do not have to use those, though. They are provided for you just if you feel like it. Okay. All right, something else I do want to mention is that Patreon is always open for enrollment. Hardwired is closed down for enrollment until the end of the month again, but we are very happy to have all of our happy Hardwired members. But now Patreon can be joined at any point. So if you would like to be a Patreon member, I would absolutely love for you to do so. It is $10 a month, and for $10 a month you get exclusive content that will not be shown on YouTube or on Facebook. It is exclusive only to my Patreon subscribers, and I try to give at least 3 extra projects a month. You also have access to our Discord server where you can hang out with other members and post your pictures of things or just chat with each other if you want to. But you do not have to be just a YouTube member. You can be a YouTuber, a Facebook person, you can be an Instagram person. It makes absolutely no difference. Everyone is welcome to the Patreon, and you can join Patreon no matter where you live. So if you are in France, or if you're in Germany, or if you are in South Africa, you can come and be a Patreon member. It does not matter where you live. Patreon is open to absolutely everybody. And the projects there, guys, are just beautiful pieces of jewelry that are inspiring. Projects are not hard. They're not focused on technique. They're just simply focused on using things that I have in my own stash and hoping to inspire you to use things that are in your own stash without going out and making purchases, and creating beautiful pieces of jewelry that you love that are sometimes easy, because not everything has to be hard. So if you are interested in that and getting exclusive content that nobody else is going to get except for other Patreon members, then I definitely would love for you to join my Patreon. All right, so now I've gotten all of the housekeeping out of the way. It is time for the project. And I do want to talk about this project just a little bit before we get started with this. This is a multi-strand bracelet project. I did not have a picture of this in advance. I'm sorry that I did not do that. I took it apart before I took the picture and I was like, wow, why did I do that? It's because it was a Monday. That's why I did that. You know how it is with Monday brain. I had Monday brain and I just wasn't thinking. So I do not have a finished picture of this one, but I will take a finished picture of it after we are finished with it. Now, let me tell you what you can expect. This is a very straightforward stringing project. It is seriously easy. It's just a 3-strand bracelet, but that's not what it's about. It's just about the beautiful beads. It's about the beautiful clasp, and it is about the time that we are going to spend together while we string it up, because that's basically what it is just stringing. And then we're going to put together a very simple pair of earrings to go with it. And then we will have a cute little set. Now, sort of like Patreon, I would like to inspire you with today's project to just put together some beautiful jewelry, because that's really all this is about. This is not about anything other than crimping, really, and maybe a simple loop. That's pretty much the extent of this, but the results are gorgeous. And that's what I want you guys to know. Gentle reminder, beautiful jewelry does not have to be a representation of every skill or technique you've ever learned. And this project is a testament to that. So I'm going to get you turned around. We're going to put together a multi-strand bracelet. I want to show you this beautiful clasp, and we're going to get right into it. So let me turn you around. All right, let's get into this. All right, everybody. So want you to see this gorgeous clasp. Oh my goodness. And this is just one of a bazillion beautiful clasps that exist in the world and that are available over on the Art Beads website as well. So whether you use the Art Beads to shop for your clasps or not, I hope that you do, but you don't have to. Just know that sometimes something more than a lobster clasp is the right choice. I am so guilty, you guys, of picking up a lobster clasp and calling it a day, right? 2 jump rings, a lobster clasp, and I'm done. Well, I've decided that we needed to be a little bit more fancy today. And so we're going to be using this guy. This is a 3-strand clasp. So 3 strands is the bracelet that we're going to be creating. And I want to show you how this one goes together. So it's one of those where you push down and it opens up just like that. So you just slide it on. Now a clasp like this, it really kind of just becomes part of the design, right? I mean, it's just stunning. I think the problem that a lot of people have with clasps like this, and when I say like this, I don't mean the style. What I mean is the metal color, is knowing what color findings to add to this. Because is it gold? Is it antique brass? Is it something in between? What do we do? Well, that's a really good question. And so I wasn't entirely sure myself. So I'm using kind of a combination of things. So I'm using this guy, and I feel like antique brass is probably the right answer, but I don't necessarily have a good set of antique brass crimps. So I'm using some gold crimps that have actually kind of, this is going to sound weird, but they've kind of tarnished a little bit. That gives it more of this kind of antique brassy color without it being like dark. So I'll show you those when we get to using those, but I'm also going to be using some bronze color bead-along bead stringing wire. I'm using the 0.46 millimeter, and I thought this was a good color choice because when I held up the gold colored bead string wire, it was just too bright. And I know you're not really going to see a lot of this, but I just wasn't quite sure what the right choice was. So I went with the bronze because it kind of just disappears into the design. So those are things to take into consideration. When you're using metal colors that are not just straight gold or straight silver colored, sometimes it's kind of hard to decide like what it is you should use. And quite honestly, if you wanted to, you could use black findings with this or hematite colored findings because of the recessed areas that are in this that have that like black patina to them. So you have options. It's just sometimes hard knowing which options to go for, because if you went with all straight like bright gold, I think it would be the wrong color choice for this. So just so you know, like even I struggle with trying to figure out the right color findings for things that are not my normal, straight up gold color or silver color. Let me show you, because just in case you're curious, this is like really yellowy gold. To me, it just seems like it's too much. It's not quite right. So that's why I went with a weird kind of combination. And then I went with some pieces that have tarnished a little bit. Just as I have a lot of tarnished gold rings. Listen, there's still a use for those tarnished gold rings. And I'm going to show you, because that's what I'm going to be using. All right. Now, as far as beads are concerned, guys, I've got some beautiful, beautiful smoky quartz. And I do have a couple of little Swarovski Prestige bicones in here as well that I'm going to be using. But I've got Smoky Quartz, and this is 100% real Smoky Quartz here. These are drilled diagonally, so there are some cubes. I'm using some beautiful bead caps and spacers to go with this. So this is one of the strands that we're going to put together. And I have some nuggets that are also, I don't really want to call these chips. They're just really smooth, nice nuggets, and some daisy spacers for another strand. And then the last strand here is these kind of rectangles. So they're not really cubes. They're more like rectangle shaped beads, but we're going to put these bead caps on them. So it's going to make them look more cylinder looking, which is kind of interesting. It's a little illusion that happens, but just kind of giving you an idea. Now I will show you, since I mentioned it, I have the little findings here to show you. So my wire guardians, they haven't tarnished too much, but you can see my crimp has tarnished a little bit, and for me that's the perfect color. I wish my wire guardians had tarnished that much. I don't think I've ever said those words out loud. I wish it had tarnished more. Said no designer ever. But yeah, I kind of wish that it had, so that it was more of the right color. But the wire guardians are so small, I think that it's going to be okay. However, I do want to hold up what an antique brass wire guardian would look like, just so that you can kind of get an idea. Rosalinda says, I love that you walk through your thought process. I think that's the most important thing sometimes more than just techniques. It's important to know like how other people are making the decisions that they are for the designs. So I think that this one would work as well. I really do. I think that the happy medium would be a tarnished gold color. But I definitely think that antique brass would work. Now, do I have antique brass crimp tubes? I do not. So that's why I kind of like, it's been a struggle. It's not exactly a normal color that I use for anything, but I think that you've got options. So just letting you know. Okay, so we are going to get started. We're going to do one strand of this at a time, obviously. However, if you wanted to string yours up and you weren't quite sure about the design, you could always use like your little bead stoppers. You can always use those to kind of help you figure out what you wanted your strands to look like. But I'm going to start with my bottom strand here. And my bottom strand is going to be the cubes. So I'm going to dump this out, and we're going to separate out here. And don't forget, we are going to put together a cute little pair of earrings to go with this, but they're going to be really, really simple. So this is not a hard design at all. It's just a pretty one. All right, pull out my hardware here. All right, so there's all of our clasps, not our clasps, our spacers, our little daisy spacers, and our bead caps. Okay, so I'm going to use some of my bead string wire here. Pull out a length of this, and we will get started. All right, so I'm going to I'm not going to use any jump rings. Now, if you want to add jump rings, you obviously can do that, but I'm going to use my wire guardians directly onto the clasp. So I'm going to thread on my crimp. And then I'm going to thread on my wire guardian. Okay, I'm going to take my wire back down through the wire guardian, but before I go through that crimp, I'm going to thread this through one of the loops on my clasp. And hook that through. Okay. And then I am going to take the end of that wire and go through my crimp. I do not have these cubes for purchase in my Etsy shop at the moment. I could consider it, but I will tell you that the strands of the Smoky Quartz that I have are very, very expensive strands, and I'm not sure that anybody would buy them. I will probably put this bracelet in the shop because someone will probably buy the bracelet, but I'm not sure anybody wants to purchase those bead strands because they were on the expensive side. So I think it's better to just use them in projects. All right, give it the tug test. And then you're going to come in with your cutter tool and you're going to trim off the excess. All right, now we are going to string up the bottom strand of our bracelet here, and I'm going to show you the pattern. So I'm going to use a very small daisy spacer. Now, there's lots of metal included in these strands. Okay, so there's the very small daisy spacer. Then I'm going to do a bead cap. And then one of my cubes. A bead cap. And a small daisy spacer. And then in between each one of these, we're going to put a crystal bicone. And I'm just using a little golden shadow bicone to go in there. Okay, so that's what that's going to look like going forward. Okay. So a lot of this is just repetition because all we're doing is stringing, but it's the end results that are worth it. And I hope what you find out from this is that sometimes stringing is exactly what you need. And I say that because I have had people come to me and they say, oh, I'm just a stringer. I'm just a stringer. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. Take off that just a part. Nobody is just a stringer. I think people act like because stringing is nothing more than threading beads onto a wire that there is no skill involved there. And that is 100% not true. Stringing, though, a lot of times can be as easy as just stringing up beautiful beads. There is a process there. There is a design process. You have to understand color. You have to understand texture and balance and patterns and things like that. So if you consider yourself just a stringer, please don't say that about yourself anymore. Say it with conviction. You are a stringer, because that is a whole genre in the jewelry making world that, you know, it is just as important and just as coveted as wire working or weaving or any of those things. So please don't ever shortchange yourself by saying I'm just something, right? Because it takes a lot of talent to put together a beaded piece of jewelry. Don't ever shortchange yourself with that. All right, you can see how pretty this looks. And this really is about the metal that's going in between there. Now, to create those kinds of textures and those kinds of balance in pieces, sometimes throwing in those bead caps and stacking those up is what can really create some fun looks in your jewelry pieces. So this was not just one bead cap or just one daisy spacer. I stacked those together to really create some interesting dimension there, not just from the cube beads themselves, but from the space in between there. It also kind of helps to take your beads to a longer place, right? Because let's say, for instance, you've only got 5 of these amazing beads that you really, really love, and you want to use them in a project, but you've only got 5 of them, and you know that 5 of them is not enough to make it, to make a bracelet out of. Throw in some beautiful bead caps and some spacers in between there, and you'd be surprised at what you can come up with, and you can still use just 5 beads. So always remember, there are ways to problem solve with your jewelry making, because I find myself in that boat a lot. I only have a handful of these beads. How am I going to get the most out of them? How pretty. So, so pretty. And I'm going to show you with the next strand that we put together how adding some bead caps can really kind of change the shape. Not necessarily really changing the shape, but it changes the appearance of the shape of the bead. So it's pretty interesting what you can do with some little metal components in between. Sandra says, I did one of your kits from Etsy as my first string necklace. I'm addicted now. Good. That's what I like to hear. I love it. I love it. I just consider my kits little gateway drugs. You know what I mean? It's a gateway drug into the bigger picture. And my kits are a great way to start because they're never hard. Like, we keep our kits pretty simple on Fridays. But it definitely is a nice way to kind of learn. Ooh, I love stringing. This is fun. Put these together. These go with this, and this goes with this. And then you really kind of blossom from there. And you look at your own beads and things in a whole new way. So I love a good kit. And I'm one, I buy kits, you guys. I know I make kits, but I also buy kits. I love like the Beadaholic kits and the Goody Beads kits, the kits that are on the Art Beads website. Like, I love a good kit. Eclectica, those kits are fantastic. So there's a lot of great kits out there. I like it because somebody does all the thinking for me, and I still get to put together a beautiful piece of jewelry, All right, so we're getting to the end of this strand. And it's really nothing more than just stringing up these pretty beads with these beautiful little spacers between them. So this will be a beautiful bracelet just as a single. But you're going to see this is going to be a really, really full bracelet once we get this finished. This is definitely what I would consider like princess jewelry to the 10th degree. Oh, I love that. Kathy says I used bead caps on rondelles once and they look like Japanese lanterns. That's awesome. I love it because little pops of metal can really change things up. And I'm going to show you the next strand. It takes those rectangle beads and makes them look like little cylinders. It's really kind of cool. So, all right, last little crystal in here. And then we're going to finish this off with our last cube. Heather's got some diagonally drilled cubes of Oregon moss agate. Oh my gosh. I would love to see a picture of those. You've got, if you do a bracelet, take a picture of it and post it so we can all see it, because that sounds amazing. Cube beads are fun, but I think sometimes they can be intimidating. So hopefully I'm giving you some ideas here. All right, finishing that one off with the little daisy spacer because that's how we started. Okay. And now we're ready to crimp this strand. I'm going to take my clasp apart. It's a little bit easier to do the other side this way. All right, so we're going to attach to this upper loop here, and mine's got had a little bad place in it, but I think it's fine. It's not that terrible, and you're really not even going to notice it once the bracelet gets put together. So, and I don't think that it made a weak spot. Nicole was Sarah today. Nicole said, nope, it's Nicole. No, you're showing up as me, you silly. Oh my. All right, so through my wire guardian, and then again, no jump ring here, so I'm just going to take that straight through the loop and pop that little wire guardian into that loop, and then we're going to crimp. I used way more bead stringing wire than I needed, but that's all right. It happens. All right, pull all of that down. All right. So make sure your wires are not crisscrossing in there, just like normal. Place that into the back notch of your crimper tool. And listen, when you're stringing, you don't ever want to pull so tight that your beads are stiff, right? You want to be sure you've still got good fluid movement in your beads. So don't pull the slack out so tightly and so much so that your beads are like rigid. You definitely don't want that, because it doesn't wear very well if you do that. All right, so there's that first strand. And like I said, this would be a beautiful bracelet all by itself, but we're extra today. And when I say extra, like this is 100% a very extra bracelet. All right, next strand that we do is going to have the little rectangles. Now, I'll show you the little bead caps are rounded. And so when you put these with those rectangles, it's going to turn them into what looks like a cylinder instead of a rectangle. And I kind of love it, because I was a little worried about the rectangle beads. I was like, well, I don't know. They look kind of funny. They're not cubes, and they just, I don't know. But it was the bead caps for me that really kind of made these work. Now, I also have some metal beads in here. I'm going to separate those out. There are some more of the little daisy spacers in here. So just separating all of these, because the bead caps and the metal beads look very, very similar. So I don't want to accidentally pick up the wrong thing. All right, now for the end of this one on the ends, we're actually going to use these little daisy spacers to create some length, because one of the challenges when you are creating a multi-strand design is making sure that all of the strands are the same length. And sometimes when you're using beads that are a different size in each strand, it can make that a little bit of a challenge, right? Because not everything is going to come out evenly. And this is one of those strands where it's not going to be quite even. And I did have to break the pattern a little bit. And so I'm going to show you that. And it's totally okay, because you're going to see that in the end, you never even notice it. So you can give yourself a break when it comes to this kind of thing, because you're going to see it really makes no difference in the end. So I'm going to start out with my crimp and my wire guardian again. And this is going to be that middle strand. So same things, going down through the wire guardian. And then before I go through the crimp, I'm going to attach it to the clasp. I cannot wait to go to the nail place today. These nails are too long. There does become a point where the nails are too long for me. So today is that day. I'm kind of over it. ready to trim these down some because they're starting to get in the way of things. Okay, so again, bringing in your crimper tool, place that into the back notch, give that a squeeze, and then turn it sideways. Put it into the front notch of the crimper tool, give that a squeeze, give it the tug test. That's really important, particularly when you're using really heavy beads like these. I mean, they're not super heavy, but these are not like, they're not lightweight lucite. These are very substantial. So, oh, I put that on the wrong one. Darn. Okay, well, we'll leave it. It's ready for the next one. Was not paying any attention at all. My goodness. Okay. It's okay. We don't have to string that one yet. It'll just be ready to go. Oh my. Having a Monday moment on a Tuesday. Okay. Let's try this again, shall we? In the middle. There. There we go. Hi, Debbie. Debbie, we're doing some beautiful stringing today. All right. Give it the tug test. Okay. Now we're ready to go. Okay. Now, I'm going to start out with my little daisy spacers. Now, I used my daisy spacers to create the length that I needed. Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I'm kind of confused as to what the extra 2 were. I'm going to look at my picture here because 1, 2, 3, 4. I did use 4. Okay, so I was talking about how sometimes it's difficult to get your strands to match in length if you're using beads that are not the same size in every strand. So using something like, no, it is not a 2-strand bracelet, Jane. It's a 3-strand bracelet. It's got a lot going on. It's got a lot going on. So using something small like this, where I can make up the difference and then split it between the ends works, or you can use like little seed beads or just like other little metal beads. But for me, the daisy spacers was the right choice. It does add texture, but overall, because it's at the end of the strand, you don't really notice it a whole lot, but it does help not only to add the extra length, but it does kind of help to offset the beads a little bit so that they're not crowding each other out for space. You can see this is going to kind of move the bead over so that it is not directly underneath this cube, which is also really nice. Okay, so now I'm going to use a bead cap and a rectangle bead and a bead cap. And then I'm going to drop that down. Now look at what happens to the rectangle bead all of a sudden. Now it's not going to take away the facet, obviously, but it really changes this up. It kind of looks like a lantern, not gonna lie. Now that somebody's mentioned lanterns, that's sort of what it looks like. But it definitely takes it from like this really hard faceted edge. It gives it just a really different appearance. So when I get the whole strand done, you're really gonna see that it kind of changes everything up. So now I'm gonna thread on a metal bead. And the metal beads are going to kind of break all of these up. So that's going to be the little in between there. So let's do another rectangle with the bead caps. And then a metal bead, and we're just going to follow that pattern. I have a golden retriever standing behind me who is panting very, very loudly. If you can hear that, he's a little hormonal right now. He's going through it at the moment. He's a funny one. He pants so loud. He's like the epitome of mouth breather. When I think of mouth breathers, I think of my dog. For sure. All right. Look how pretty. And then I will hold this up. What is it, Pat? Why is it that golden retrievers are like that? It's so funny. I don't understand. He pants so much louder. Oh, I left out a bead. He pants so much louder than any of the other dogs. You know, and it's dramatic too. It does look a little Victorian, doesn't it? He's having a hot flash. No, he's definitely he's hormonal because the youngest, she is on her cycle at the moment. She's at the end of her cycle, and when she gets to the end of her cycle, he gets crazy because he's like, I want to make puppies right now. And so I have to keep them separated, but he pants really hard all the time, but it's especially loud when she's hormonal. That makes him hormonal. Okay, so I'm going to finish this off, and I'm going to show you the difference here on the ends, because this was another kind of one of those things where it doesn't really matter. You're not going to notice it, but we started here with the 4 daisy spacers, right, to create a little bit of space that gave these 2 enough room. It also made sure that my strands were going to be the same length, and I'm going to finish it with the 4. But I have not finished this strand with the same amount of bead, or with the same bead as I started. So I started with the bead caps and the rectangle bead, but I finished with a metal bead. And that's just because, again, the strands would not have been the same length had I finished this strand with the rectangle beads with the bead caps. Now, the reason that I'm pointing that out is because I know some of you are crazy perfectionists, and that would drive you absolutely crazy. But I'm here to tell you that I am also one of those people, and it normally would drive me crazy. However, in the grand scheme of things, you don't notice it. Particularly because this strand is in the middle. Nobody is ever going to look at this bracelet, like, other than you, obviously, because you're going to know it. But nobody else is going to look at it and go, oh, well, your ends of your strands, though there are 4 little daisy spacers, like, there's a rectangle here and a round bead down here. Like, that's, why did you do that? Nobody else is going to notice that but you. But look at how cool those rounded bead caps made those rectangles look. To me, it just makes them look smoother, even though it hasn't physically, changed the structure. But visually, I feel like it really kind of softened those rectangles. They look more tubular to me than they do like a rectangle. I think that worked out really, really nicely. All right, so now I'm going to have to grab a crimp from the last strand because I used it already, the second one. All right. And again, this would be a beautiful strand all by itself, but this bracelet is really got a lot going on. So multi-strand it is. All right. And again, going through the middle. Smoky Quartz is so underrated. I agree with you, Holly, 100%, because it is absolutely beautiful. And I don't even care how it is shaped, whether it's round or a cube or a chunk, or it's just beautiful. All right, so pull all of this down. And again, be sure that you're pulling out the slack, but you're not pulling it so tightly that your beads are standing at attention on their own. You still want to have a nice drape to this. Okay. So going into the back notch of your crimper tool, try not to get your other things caught. Okay, and then turn it sideways, put it into the front notch, and give that a squeeze. And give it the tug test. Super important. Trim off the excess. All right, this is where we're at so far. All right, we're going to add a third strand to this. And because I was not paying attention earlier, we're already ready. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the chunks. And the chunks are, I'm calling them chunks. They're nuggets, if you will. They're just not chips. So if it's not a chip, it's a chunk. Okay, that's what we're saying. All right, now this is more of a beady strand than the rest of these. We're gonna do 3 and then a daisy spacer, 3 and a daisy spacer, and we're gonna go all the way down here. So these have less, or this strand has less metal than the rest of the bracelet. This is just enough to break it up just a little bit. I didn't want to just do just the chunks without some sort of metal in there, but I didn't want to overdo it because the texture that you get from these beautiful smooth chips is really nice. So 3 each and then a daisy spacer. Also wanted to mention to you guys that if you've got crimp beads, so I prefer a crimp tube, and you can use a crimp tube in the same way, but if you've got crimp beads and you have an excessive amount of them, you can use those as little tiny beads. So like down here where we use the daisy spacers, you can always use a crimp bead as a spacer bead, whether it's at the end here where you need several more, or if it's in between beads. So for me, instead of putting a little daisy spacer in here to break these up, if I had a little gold or brass colored crimp bead, I could use a crimp bead as a spacer. So I know a lot of times, people are like, oh, I don't have any little tiny, I don't have a small enough metal bead. If you've got some crimp beads, you've got a small enough metal bead. Just keep that in mind. What am I doing? I keep forgetting to put the daisy spacer in there. I think people underestimate the uses of their little crimp beads because they make great spacers and they're oftentimes so small. So it's a nice little way to break things up without having to dig through and find some metal colored seed beads or use something bigger because you don't have a smaller option. Always use a crimp. And don't crimp it, just leave it, All right, getting to the end. Well, we're about halfway. Not quite to the end, but halfway. And we're going to put together a super easy little pair of earrings to go with this so that we have a full set. And the daisy spacers are also helpful when you're using chip beads. Now, I know these aren't smooth, but it doesn't change the fact that each one of these is different, is a different width. So you can't like bank on every single one of these being a 4mm because they're just not going to be. And when you're using chip beads, that can be a challenge when you are trying to space out a multi-strand design where you need your strands to match. So the daisy spacers can kind of help with that. But keep that in mind when you're using chip beads and you're trying to measure out, because I'm here to tell you they can be a challenge to work with, because sometimes you've got one that's like 3mm, you've got one that's like 5mm, and there's no rhyme or reason with chip beads. So using the metal to really kind of help create the right length, not only does it look good, but it's also really helpful to just add a little extra in there. So all right, last little set of 3. So there's our last daisy spacer. Patty says she would love to see more chip bead ideas. I can do that for you. I like chip beads. I know a lot of people don't know how to use them because of that exact reason, because they're difficult to work with because they're all different widths, right? But I think there's a lot of things that you can do with chip beads that people don't tend to think about. They can add some real beauty to your designs. All right, let's crimp this one. We're going to call this bracelet done, because anything more to this I think would be overboard, right? It would be a little overkill, but you know, Wendy's got a question, and I know some people are kind of answering it. And I love Susie's answer here. So the question was, I found 20 spools, and this is not a silly question, Wendy, not at all. This is a great question. She said, I found 20 spools of 7-strand beading wire in an old box. I'm used to using 19 and 49 strand beading wire. Any suggestions on what I can use the 7-strand for? And then we've got some people chiming in here. Susie says, I love the 7-strand for earrings because of the structure that it has. Ginger says, I use 7-strand for purse charms, key fobs, and fan pulls. Right? There are so many good uses for the 7-strand. So the 7-strand is, if you need structure, 7-strand is where it's at. And all of those ideas are fantastic. Earrings, key fobs, fan pulls, that's one of my favorites. I love a beautiful beaded fan pull. You can use them in all kinds of home decor situations, but when it comes to jewelry making, if you're doing bracelets that have, or necklaces or whatever the case may be, where you're doing short sections of beading. So let's say for this bracelet, let's just use this as an example, right? Let's say that instead of stringing up, this last strand was a combination. Half of it was stringing, and then in the middle I had a wire, where I did some wire wrapping, and then the other side of it was some stringing. Because I'm only using, if that were the case, I would only be using a section that's maybe 2.5 inches long, right? Well, because that strand is only 2.5 inches long, it doesn't need full drape to it. 7-strand is a great option because you're using it in small sections. So it doesn't matter that it doesn't have that fluidity. It's going to serve its purpose, right, of stringing up beads. and it's still going to look great. So you can use it in small situations like that. If you are making like the front of a necklace, where you're just using maybe a few inches, it's great for places where you're only using a few inches of bead stringing wire. I also like it in designs where the beading wire is exposed. So if you like the color of it, or you could mix it with some beads, where the bead stringing wire is part of the design. It looks really good in exposed wire designs. So I think you can find some really good uses for it, for sure. Is it a heavy bracelet? Well, it's not lightweight. It's not too heavy in a sense that I wouldn't wear it, but I mean, this is definitely not a bracelet that you would wear every single day. I mean, maybe you would, but this is definitely a one of those like special occasion kind of bracelets. I don't know. Some people might wear it every single day. If you're used to wearing stacks, this is not going to bother you at all. For me, I don't normally wear this many bracelets, so this would be something that I would just wear out on special occasions. But I guess it's really up to the wearer. But look at the, to me, it's all about the clasp. Oh my goodness. Now that is a gorgeous piece of jewelry right there. And all we did was string, right? All we did was string up beautiful things and create beautiful textures. It's just really, really nice. Stacy says it's sexy. I agree, Stacy. It really is. It's just beautiful. All right, so now let's make a set out of it, because if we're gonna make a big showstopper like that, let's put some earrings with it. Now the earrings are gonna be simple. Simple, 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 but still beautiful. So for the earrings, we're just using some of the cubes and the rectangles to just create a simple little matching pair of earrings. Because with a bracelet that is this much of a showstopper, I don't think we need like crazy big earrings, right? We just need a little something. So we're going to put together a quick little pair here. I'm going to take a head pin. I'm going to thread on. I'm using both of the strands that don't have the chunks in them, the elements from those. So the daisy spacer, and then the bead cap, a cube, right? And then same thing. So just like in the bracelet, we're topping that off with the bead cap and the daisy spacer. And then we're going to do the bead cap and the rectangle bead and the bead cap. There's all my extra crimps. And we're just going to top that off with one of those beautiful little bicones. We're going to do a simple loop, and we're going to call these done. So pretty. So, so pretty. Simple loop, because I don't have enough wire here to do a wrapped loop. So I'm just going to grab the wire right where it is exiting the bead and give that a bend. Come in with my cutter tool, leave myself about 1/4 of an inch of wire, and then I'm going to use my round nose pliers to roll back. All right, so I've got my loop, and I'm going to add my ear wire, and we have a beautiful, beautiful set. Ta-da! I think the earrings are just the perfect amount, right? Because they do have the elements, the main elements from the bracelet, without being over the top. So they're not going to take away, right? You're going to put on the earrings and they're not going to detract from this amazing, amazing bracelet that you've got on. Such a pretty set. Yep. Love, love, love. So, so pretty. All right, friends, I'm going to turn you around. And if you're curious, yes, I will be putting this set into... I have ulterior motives here. No, but I mean, honestly, this is not a bracelet that I could just throw in a drawer somewhere. This has got to go into the shop, of course. So this will be in the Etsy shop here later this afternoon, probably, definitely by Friday. If you're interested in it, it's going into the shop, because I can't just toss it into a drawer with all my other finished pieces. Like, it deserves to go home and be loved by somebody who's going to wear it, right? Look at that clasp. Oh my goodness. It's just beautiful. Really, really beautiful. And then the earrings, I think, were just the perfect amount of sparkle. And I threw them in the floor. Kristen says this set says Golden Era Hollywood. Yes. That is exactly what I'm yes. 100%. Yes, yes, yes. So there you go, guys. I hope you have enjoyed today's project. It's hard to see because I can't seem to, yeah. Oh my goodness. I hope that you have enjoyed today's project. And listen, I hope that if you have ever called yourself just a stringer, that you will stop doing that, because nobody is just anything. Own it, because it is 100% a skill. It is 100% an art form. And you deserve to say that about yourself. If you string beads, it's not as easy as it seems, right? There's a lot of different working parts here. So even though we just did some stringing, there were some little nuggets of wisdom in there as well. And I hope that I have inspired you to go check out some of the beads that you've got in your own stash, and maybe also to go check out some beautiful clasps, because sometimes a lobster clasp is not the answer. And for me, I get stuck in a rut always picking out that lobster clasp because it's just easy and I don't have to think about it. But sometimes the clasp can be part of the project. So, all right, everybody, I hope I inspired you. Go make something beautiful. I will see Hardwired at 4 p.m. Eastern time this afternoon for our weekly project. The rest of you guys, I will see you on Friday at 1 p.m. for our Feel Good Friday show. So please be sure that you are setting your reminders for that, and enjoy the rest of your week. And I will see you guys very, very soon. I love ya. Bye, guys.